In this episode, we'll look at how the Beatles influenced Brian Wilson, and then how Brian Wilson influenced the Beatles. And along the way, we're going to get some good vibrations. Let's drop the needle. I've said there was kind of a friendly rivalry between the Beatles and the Beach Boys. When the Beatles released Rubber Soul, and Brian heard it for the first time, he was blown away. And he made the decision that the Beach Boys' next album had to beat that. It had to be better than that. So now the pressure was really on Brian to come up with something special. So he poured his heart and soul into this next album. And while the band was out touring, as he had done before, he got the wrecking crew together, the studio musicians, into the studio, and he started recording all the tracks. Now the band had been touring, and they were particularly in Europe, where things were going down smashing when they were playing all their old songs, the surf songs and the car songs. They were a great live, nostalgic band. So they come back in the studio to see what Brian has next. Brian basically has this album about finished. He's asking them to do some vocal overdubs and a little bit of instrumentation, but he does not want any creative input from any member of the band. Brian's got the whole album in his head. Obviously, this does not set very well with members of the band who think the direction that Brian's going could be a little bit too weird, and the album is called Pet Sounds. I like the hit, Wouldn't It Be Nice? The lovely Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder. I'm Waiting for the Day. Their version of Sloop John B. and the amazing God Only Knows. I listened to that song today with Carl Wilson singing lead on that, and the hairs all stand up. It is just transcendent. And in fact, when Paul McCartney heard it, he said, this is the greatest song ever written and ever recorded. And he made it a point of playing it to all of his children. It has inspired Paul for years. And the Beach Boys figured out how to play that song, and a lot of others, but how to particularly play God Only Knows live. And I saw them do it in Chicago at the Airy Crown Theater. And when Carl hit those notes, like I said, the hairs stand up. It was an amazing performance, and it's a terrific song. I also like I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, and of course the phenomenal Caroline No, which the recording includes them taking a Sparkletts water bottle that's empty and hitting it with a hammer, and then a train going by outside, a little kid's bicycle ring going, and of course a dog barking. And the haunting lyrics, the loss of innocence. Again, Caroline No, a tremendous song. Pet Sounds is credited with being one of the first psychedelic albums because it is certainly unlike anything else you've heard before. And as Rubber Soul inspired Brian to make Pet Sounds inspired Paul McCartney to make Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And in fact, in one of the polls that Rolling Stone magazine did, where they listed the 500 greatest rock albums of all times, number 2 is Pet Sounds, and number 1 is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The Beatles and the Beach Boys kept listening to each other, and boy, we were the lucky ones as a result. Now, Brian was on a creative high, and he focused all of his talents and energies into what would be their next single, even incorporating a very odd instrument called a theremin. But now, I had actually heard a theremin previously from a really obscure band that I've talked about before, which was Lothar and the Hand People. But the theremin is in this song, and the first time I heard this song on the radio, I couldn't decide whether I hated it or I loved it. It was that different from anything that you've ever heard before. And of course the song is Good Vibration. Continuing this incredible creative surge, Brian starts work on what becomes one of the most fabled, unreleased albums of all time. He gets together with Van Dyke Parks as his collaborator and his lyricist and says he wants to create a teenage symphony to God. Meanwhile, the success of Good Vibrations continues to send the band, the Beach Boys, to even a higher stratosphere. And in 1966, the British music publication New Musical Express does a poll of the best band in the world. And the Beach Boys beat out both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones for that honor. In the next episode, we're going to take a look at one of the most fabled, unreleased albums of all time, Smile. Now, in the meantime, I've created a playlist on Spotify of the songs for this episode so they can check them out. And if you're still interested in what's happening with the Beach Boys, there's a whole lot more to come in the next episode. Thanks for watching. Keep it rockin'. If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.